So this is CJ Baker, and this is an epic soundtrack to a mundane existence. So over on my website, I recently wrote an article on 11 protest songs of the Beatles. But I decided I'd also present it in video form as well. So the Beatles, they weren't necessarily known as a political band, but at times they did speak out on social issues. Like, for example, during their 1965 American tour, they refused to perform in front of segregated audiences. But at times, they also address social issues through their music. So right now, we'll consider 11 of these tunes, and we'll present them in chronological order. So the first song is Think for Yourself, and it appeared on their 1965 album, Rubber Soul. So George Harrison wrote this song about the narrow mindedness of people, so this could apply in both political and personal contexts. So even though George Harrison was a bit vague about the meaning, in his 1980 autobiography, he did acknowledge that it was probably the government that he wrote it about. So the next song, which is one of the more well-known protest songs, it's Taxman, which appeared on their 1966 album Revolver. This is actually another tune composed by George Harrison. So the lyrics were in protest of the progressive tax system in the UK that took 95% of the Beatles' earnings just because of the tax bracket that they were in. So the lyrics also reference Prime Minister Harold Wilson and the Conservative Party leader Ted Heath, who Harrison deemed is responsible for the exorbitant tax rates. And also, part of the motivation of the song was that Harrison was frustrated by the fact that his taxes were also going towards military funding. So the next protest song is from 1966, I'm Only Sleeping, and this is also from Revolver. And I was going back and forth whether or not to include this as a protest song because based on the research I did, it actually just seems to be a song about the fact that John Lennon slept a lot. But there was an article I found online written by Tom Taylor for Fallout, and he actually argues that this is actually the fierce, fiercest protest song ever by both John Lennon and the Beatles. And even though he doesn't cite any specific sources, he does make connections to John Lennon and Yoko Ono's 1969 bed-in peace protest. So he basically was citing the song as an important precursor to those bed-ins. And then he also suggests that sleep is used metaphorically as an act of resistance. So he's basically saying that by sleeping, you're making the choice not to participate in a capitalist system. So, regardless of whether or not that's entirely the case, he at least makes some compelling arguments. So, the next song, which was from 1966, it's Yellow Submarine. And according to Paul McCartney, he was just writing a simple children's song. So, apparently, it's not about drugs, even though it probably is. I don't know. And he also didn't really have any political intentions, according to him. But despite the fact that on the surface it may not appear to be a direct protest song, in the 60s it was adopted by the counterculture as an anti authoritarian anthem. And it was actually used during anti Vietnam war rallies, and it was used for other strikes and protests. So, like I said, on the surface, I don't really see why it was adopted. I guess I can see how it does have a message of peace and unity. And the beautiful thing about music is there's different ways that it can be interpreted. So the next song is All You Need Is Love, which was a hit 1967 single. And it was actually written as Britain's contribution to All World. So All World was the first live global television link, and the program ended up being watched by over 400 million people in 25 countries. So the lyrics of All You Need Is Love, it really became a summer love anthem, and it promoted love and unity in the wake of the Vietnam War. So the next song is She's Leaving Home, which is off the groundbreaking album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And even though that album is not explicitly political, it was considered to be an important part of the counterculture movement. And also, in a sense, with the album, the band was rebellion or protesting against their previous mop top image. So they're basically trying to totally destroy that previous perception of them. But this particular tune was inspired by news reports about a runaway 17-year-old girl named Melanie Cole. So the song explores the generational gap between the countercultural generation and the parents' generation. So the next tune is Back in the USSR, and this tune from the Right album is the band's, we can say it's a parody. It's a parody of both Chuck Berry's Back in the USA and the Beach Boys' California Girls. So the tune could be viewed as a satirical critique of distorted, idealized views of Americana. But the song did end up courting some controversy. It was basically, it received criticism from both sides of the political aisle for promoting communism. So once again, it was off the White Album, and the White Album could be viewed as the most explicitly political album, and 4 songs on this list happen to be on the White Album or White Album. So that includes the next song, Blackbird. So this gorgeous tune was written by Paul McCartney, and he wrote it in support of the U.S. civil rights movement during the 1960s. So part of the motivation was the Little Rock Nine, who were 9 black girls who in 1957 were enrolled into the newly desegregated Little Rock Central High School. So, in an interview with Apple Music, McCartney explained why he chose to use Blackbird as a metaphor for Black Girl instead of being more direct. So, this is the statement he said: I use metaphors so that, on the one hand, if you're a little kid, a lot of little kids say to me that Blackbird is the favorite song. So if you're a little kid, they don't know about civil rights. They're seeing a blackbird and the freedom, and they're feeling the idea of escaping barriers and stuff. They just like it as a little song. It's not hiding it, it's just using a metaphor. I sometimes think that's stronger. Also, the song, I mean, it was covered a number of times, but recently it was notably covered by Beyonce on her Cowboy Carter album. So that was a powerful rendition of it as well. So the next song, another tune from the Right album, is Piggies. So this was composed by George Harrison, and this was inspired by George Orwell's Animal Farm. And it's interesting to note that an early draft of the song concludes with the animal saying, "Paying Piggy thanks to the Pig Brother." So Pig Brother being a play on Big Brother, which is another Orwell reference from 1984. So this anti-establishment tune, it really is a critique of materialistic greed and of class distinctions. So the next song is Revolution. So also appeared on the Right album. So Lennon composed this tune in response to the anti-Vietnam War protests that were taking place. So I said it appeared on the White Album, and that was Revolution 1. The original version was actually a B-side to Hey Jude, and it's slightly different than Revolution 1. And then, of course, there's Revolution 9, which was an experimental sound collage, and that could also be viewed as a protest tune. So for the song Revolution, the lyrics supported change, but they opposed using violent methods to accomplish it. And that's what was denoted by the line, "You can count me out." But there was some left-leaning individuals who criticized the lyrics for being too passive, or the lyrics for being too vague about what their intent were. So they weren't exactly sure where John stood on issues of wanting a true revolution. So one notable critique was actually from Nina Simone, who wrote the response song, also entitled Revolution, which appeared on her 1969 album, To Love Somebody. So the next song is To Come Together. So the tune originated from a campaign song that John Lennon was asked to write for Timothy Leary's intended bid to run for governor of California. So the song itself isn't particularly political, but the call to come together could be viewed as a message of unity and purpose. That concludes the list of 11 Beatles protest songs. So, is there any other Beatles protest songs that I did not include that you'd like to mention in the comments? Feel free to do so. And if you want me to continue to make videos, please like and subscribe. And once again, the list appears in written form on the website Ongoing History of ProtestSongs.com. So thanks for watching, and please stay safe. So you say you want a revolution, I know, but we just want to live on yellow submarine.